Yo, yo, yo! Welcome back, guys, to Cast and Commons, the show where we talk and discuss all things Pauper. I am your host, Teasdale, and this is my co-host, Reese.
Hello.
No need for names this week. No need for names this week. It is too important. Today, we have a bonus episode. You may have noticed right in the middle of us, like some Dragon Ball Z stuff, that we have Emma Partlow on the show. She's
Hello.
the English representative of the PFP. It is best where possible to have our special guests come on a separate episode, as it really gives them the opportunity to shine, all that sort of good stuff, and not be overshadowed to show the top 8 of random challenges. So not only does she make amazing content, a writer and editor for TCG Player, a big cube enthusiast, and of course the UK member of the PFP. So Emma, would you like to start by introducing yourself? Let us know how you got into Magic and how you ultimately led into Pauper, I guess, as your main focus, or one of your main focuses.
So my origin story started in 2014 when a really cool set came out called Khans of Tarkir, so the Siege Rhino set. So I was dabbling into Magic a little bit at this point, but very casually. So I come from a Warhammer background. I played a lot of Warhammer, and then a lot of my Warhammer friends were like talking about Magic the Gathering. I was like, what the hell is this Magic the Gathering game? I've never heard of it before. And another thing that happened during this time is that where I lived in Ipswich, an LGS just opened. And Ipswich didn't have an LGS at this point. So it just seemed a really good time to like, cool, I can try and get to Magic, see what's going on, get involved, because hobbies crossed over from my friend groups because of Warhammer and because of Magic. And I remember going to a pre-release at Extreme Trades, which was an old LGS in Colchester, which was a Khans of Tarkir. And I just remember having a really fun time because I flipped a Ponyback Brigade, which is the common morph in Mardu, that when you flip, you make some goblins. And I did that, and I was just like, this is really cool. I just want to keep doing cool game actions like this. And I've been hooked ever since. So I've been playing. So I pretty much play standard at this point because that was the easiest way to get into Magic back then. Not so much now. That's another conversation. And then I slowly ebbed into modern because I like the idea of my cards not rotating. I like the idea of buying cards and like actually being able to use them whenever I can in a format. So I played a lot of modern. I'm a big Tron gamer in general, so I've still got mono green Tron since 2016, 2017. And it was around then I got into Pauper. So I really like the idea of having a format that has a limitation, where the limitation in this case is the rarity, because it's just strictly commons. And it's like, cool, this is a really fun way to like get creative and innovate things. You're just working with draft chaff, essentially, like leftovers and packs. And that idea really grabbed me. So I got into Pauper around the time Cloud of Fairies was banned.
Yeah.
Which was probably a good time to get into Pauper, let's be honest, because that card is pretty messed up. And since then, I've been really enjoying it. I'm a big fan of... So I played a lot of Affinity at this point. So the old school Affinity, which had ATOGs, and it was 5 colors. It had Fling, had ATOG. I also played Bogles at this point, which was also close to 5 color, where you also had Fling. You sometimes had Essence Harvest as well, just to get around combat damage. And it was just really fun. And a lot of people would just hang out, have a Pauper deck and just play. And these decks were like 20, 30 pounds. And, you're not going to miss 20, 30 pounds when it comes to a whole deck full of commons. And at this point, cards didn't really rotate in Pauper. So it was just really easy to have like a mono green Stompy deck and be like, cool, I could just play this for years and it will pretty much stay the same. And since then I've been playing Pauper on and off, and now I'm on a panel that gets to curate the format, which is still a little weird even though it's been a few years now. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Wait, has it been a few years? Really?
2021 I think is when we started, or 2022.
Like, I thought it had been over a year, but I don't know, like that was like, oh, time flies.
Let me just check quickly. I think
Time
it's 2021.
flies?
Time is a flat circle.
Wow.
Yeah. 2022.
2022.
So it would be 2 years. It was 2 years this month. actually,
Wow.
because we started in January.
Well, time
Yeah.
does fly.
It's felt longer. For better or for worse, it's felt longer.
Um,
I think going back just on when you were saying about when you started, I think Cairns was such a good time to start playing Magic as well. Like,
Yeah.
it was probably the time I played the most limited because I was at uni and I had a
Yes.
student loan to spend.
Nice.
And we just drafted literally like triple cans, maybe like 3-4 times a week, and it was a great time. And obviously all the morph commons, like the Pony Brigade and stuff like that, were all sick and limited as well. So it was good.
I still have a sealed box of cards that I bought
Nice.
in 2016, and it's still sealed. And I need to crack it open with friends and just draft triple cards because that set was just so much fun. I understand it's back on Arena and everyone's been enjoying it on Arena, but it's like, nah, I need to shuffle my cards. I need to flick them. I like the aesthetic quite a lot, so I need to crack that open at some point.
Cairns was definitely a great set, to be fair. Can't complain there. I only remember really standard, to be honest. I just remember, is it Outpost Siege?
Siege Rhino.
Yes.
Yep. And Wingmate Rock was another good one as well. The mythic bird that made another bird if you raid it.
Yeah.
Is also great.
Was that the Pro Tour where Chapin got to the finals with like Abzam Wingmate Rock and just had his weird laid out cards because he lays them out in like a cube squares? That's what I remember.
I don't think he was in the final because it was Sean McLaren, Ari Lax, and Ari Lax won that final.
Right.
Because if Sean McLaren won it, he would have been the first person to win back. One of the first people to win a back-to-back Pro Tour. Because he won Ball of the Gods, but he was. I believe that happened in that Pro Tour. I just don't think it was the finals.
Right.
But yeah, Wingmate Rock was a hell of a good card.
That was God Peak stand got format everything coverage a lot. Now I'm confused, to be honest.
Siege Rhino, what more could you want? And now we have nonsense like Questing Beast instead, and it's rubbish.
I still on this from this day believe Pod got banned because people were worried about Siege Rhino. I still to this day give me Pod back, please. Anyways, rant over. This one is obviously for myself as a noob writer, basically. How did you get into writing? And explain what a normal day looks like for you as obviously editor and also a writer for TCG. Yeah.
So my origin story for writing kind of came about because I was starting to get competitive. So in the 2016-2017 era, when I started getting to Modern, I picked up Tron, and more importantly, I picked up Eldrazi Tron, which was really good at the time because Grixis Death Shadow was also really good, and Chalice of the Void was just one of the best cards to play in Modern at this point. So I played a lot of FNMs, I did a lot of like PPTQs, I played a lot of just like big modern events like the Axiom modern events, those kind of things. For those at home, Axiom is a huge TO in the UK, and they have these mega modern events which are very stacked in prizes. They get a lot of people travel for them just because the prizes are so good. So as part of playing and testing and thinking, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be really cool just to write this stuff down? Because the best way I learned things is writing it down. Like the process of me physically writing it or typing it means I learn it better. It's just the way I learn. So I just do that a lot. So I just thought, cool, I can just write like little tournament reports to myself for like an F&M and just think, how I would have sideboard. What misplay did I make? How could I have played this matchup differently? And I found it was really, really useful because it just allowed me to think and allowed me to just get an idea of, learning matchups and stuff like that. So I just wrote it on like a notepad for a while. And it came to the point I was like, why not if I just write a blog? What's the worst that can happen? It's just a really good space for me to write stuff down. I can present it in a clear and formal way. And if other people play Eldrazi Tron, they can read it and be like, yeah, that would be cool. I can take something away from this. I wasn't doing it with, hey, I need to make money off this. This is content. It's just, what's the worst that can happen? I've got nothing to lose by doing this. So I did it. I wrote some things about Eldrazi Tron. I had a very small Twitter following at this point. This was like, this is like 8 years ago now, almost. Jesus Christ. That was a long time ago. And and then I put it in Facebook groups because this was back during a time where Facebook groups had this was before a time like when Discord really kicked off. So you did have Facebook groups that were like the Burn Facebook group or the the Soul Sisters, the Merfolk, the Troll, and I was in the Eldrazi one because there was a lot of crossover between like Ban Eldrazi, which was another good deck, as well as Eldrazi Tron. So I was just like, hey, I've been playing FNMs. I've been experimenting with Eldrazi Tron. I played Eldrazi Mimic for a while in my list instead of Chalice of the Voids, just because I wanted people dead a little quicker. And there was like a aggressively leaning one replicating Eldrazi Stompy in Legacy at the time. And then people like picked up on it. I was like, yeah, this is really good. This is really useful sort of thing. And then people would just like read it and then I would get DMs about it on Twitter. And it's like, this is weird, but cool, people acknowledge this. And there was a point when I went to GP Liverpool and I was playing in one of like the modern side events, like the 4-round events where you just like farm prize tickets to get stuff off the prize wall. And I sat down to play against an opponent and he was like, you're the person that writes about Eldrazi Tron, aren't you? And it's like, yeah. How do you know? How do you know who I am? This is really weird. And he was just, my opponent was just like, this is really helpful. I really appreciate what you've done, sort of thing. I know it's not something you're serious about, but I appreciate the way you've written it because it's helped me get better at the game. And after that, I was like, maybe there's something to this. If someone's just randomly came up to me by chance because they were my opponent, going, hey, what you've done is really good. Then there's got to be some weight to that, right? So after that point, I just kind of pursued it. I remember emailing Hipsters of the Coast just off the bat going, hey, I want to write Magic. What do you think? And they were like, yeah, sure. And then it kind of snowballed from there. And now I run Magic for TCG Player. So it worked out. But yeah, it's just basically what's the worst that can happen? Because at worst, nothing happens, but you got nothing to lose, so you may as well go for it, right? So yeah, that's how it kind of happened. It was just more of a how to get better with Eldrazi Tron, and now it's my career. So that's a weird trajectory that I wasn't expecting. I'm very thankful for it, but it's a very weird trajectory that I would not have imagined 7-8 years ago.
I guess follow on from that, I guess. So the question is basically, what is the favourite way to make Magic content? I'm assuming it's writing, obviously, with your process, but what advice would you give to someone that is either thinking about it or aspiring to be a content creator in whichever space you prefer, obviously?
So my preferred way is writing. I've had a knack for writing, during school. I was always good at English. That was always my strength. Maths not so great, but that's why I play Magic, because maths has helped me get better. Playing Magic has got me better at maths, which is a really cool aspect of the game. The trick, if you want to do anything, is just practice. The first thing you're gonna make is not gonna be great, but that's fine. You're not gonna have the polished result on the first go. And if you do that, I think that's kind of worrying. I think as long as you're just doing the content and you're doing it consistently, that's all you can do. It's just be honest with yourself and think about the things you actually want to cover, not necessarily the things that other people are covering, because it's like clickbait or anything like that. Like if there's a really unique aspect or something you enjoy, go for it. Like you're not getting paid to do this, so you may as well talk about the things that you're really passionate about, because that comes through in the content. And if it comes through in the content, people are going to pick up on that and then they'll come to you. And if you're consistent, that audience will slowly grow. Granted, it is really hard because Magic is in a kind of a weird space right now. A lot of people are covering it, especially like Commander. There's a lot of Commander content just because that is the biggest audience in Magic, and it will probably be until the end of time. But yeah, just the trick is just to do it and not overthink it. A lot of people get caught up in the heuristics and the presentation, and it needs to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect, and that's fine. If you made a mistake somewhere, or you said something wrong in a podcast or on a video, if you're got a good personality and you are passionate about it, people are very forgiving because they understand that you're on the same level as your audience. So most people will brush that aside if they're having a good time.
I feel like this
Hopefully
answers.
they forgive all our bad takes, still.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like this answer is gonna resonate with me very, very hard.
Yeah, like I know social media and online does a really good job of like, hey, you misplayed, you could have done this, you could have done that, you could have done this. But at the same time, if they enjoyed watching it, they won't bring that stuff up. People make mistakes, we're all human. Magic is a ridiculously hard game. I make misplays all the time because I'm human, and that's okay as long as you're honest about it and you don't try and hide it and you're like, whoops, I messed this up, oh well, I know for next time. People are forgiving. Like, the proper people in your audience are forgiving, not the keyboard warriors that just come and
Yeah.
go and go, oh, actually, you should have done this.
Have you been reading my channel and Cast and Commons YouTube comments by the sounds of this? Just out of curiosity.
I've read a lot of YouTube comments and Twitter comments in general, and I'm being a woman in the magic space. I get it a lot, so I understand, but don't let the negative the one-time negative comments get you down, because you're gonna get them, because that's just the way social media is built, unfortunately, these days.
But yeah, that before we move on, obviously that's solid advice, to be fair, because I started writing for Cards Realms, and it's pretty much the same thing. Just casually. Well, my articles were originally awful. You start to get used to doing it. I've never really wrote anything, and as Reese can definitely attest to this, even texting, like, I'm barely legible. Like, that doesn't make any sense. What does that even mean? So it's definitely a steep learning curve. So yeah, that advice definitely will actually resonate with me, to be fair.
Another good thing adjacent to that, it's something that's really good to put on like your resume or your CV, going, hey, I write about XYZ on the side, because it shows you got good English skills. Or hey, I do streaming, or hey, I do a podcast, or hey, I do video. It's a really good way to show like future employers that you have passions and you are working on a certain skill sets which will just take you far in life. Like, being a good speaker is a good skill. Being good at English is also a good skill. Carrying yourself on camera is also a good skill in the digital age. So all this stuff matters at some point, even if you decide not to do content anymore.
It definitely does work out for your work as well, because people at work found out I do a podcast and a YouTube channel. So now they come over to me. Oh, we've got this safety talk to do. Can you come help us? So yeah, I'm definitely used to that. So yeah, that's definitely one thing that is very true.
Public speaking is a good skill.
Very, very true.
I think for my first question, it sort of moves more into like play magic than the content side of things. But basically, if anyone follows you on social media, it's pretty obvious you're a very big Cube fan.
Yes.
Obviously your Peasant Cube was just on Shuffle Up and Play as well, which is pretty
That was
sweet.
a good time. That was really cool.
Yeah, really good.
Video was a banger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think for me, sort of the main question is what are you able to get out of Cube that you either prefer to other ways to play Magic, or you only get it out of playing Cube?
So Cube for me is Magic the Gathering, the board game, but I get to build the board game. And I respect the fact, this is going to sound a little sad, but it's just the way I think. I like to think ahead. So I see stuff like Cube as like a time capsule. So it's really good at encompassing something that you really, really love about Magic. For me, it's commons and uncommons. I think they're really cool. Everyone talks about mythic rares and rares all the time. Great. I want to play a Gonti that's now an uncommon and like steal your best card or whatever. And the good thing about Cube is, if I ever fell out of love with Magic, left the industry, or moved on in life, I can still keep this cube and crack it open with a few friends 40 years down the line, and we'll have a good time. Very similar to like what Commander is now. It's a very evergreen thing. where even if I'm not in Magic anymore, I can be like, cool, we can crack the cube open, have a day of it, and that is fine. That it's its own thing. It doesn't need to be curated or updated. I can leave my cube now for like 40 years and it'll still be fine. I won't leave it, but I could do that. And Cube for me is just a really cool way for me to express my Magic language. So I love commons and uncommons. I can get people into commons and uncommon formats, and people don't realize how good Peasant is, or Pauper for that matter. On a side note, they just think, "Oh, commons and uncommons, these are rubbish." Like, I want the splashy mythics and rares. But when people have played my cube over the last like 3 or 4 months, due to like Shuffle Up and Play and CubeCon, which was in October, they're like, wow, this is like really powerful. And it's like, well, yeah, because Force of Will and Sylvan Library and Demonic Tutor, these are all uncommons. These existed before rares. So, like, these independently powerful cards do exist in Peasant. And it's just a really good way for me not only to express myself as a Magic person and a player, but just to remind people that commons and uncommons are pretty good, and you can have these really high power formats and you don't need like power 9 or anything like that. But for me, Cube is just a really good way for me to celebrate what I love about Magic, and I get to keep this board game for the rest of my life if I wanted to, and share it with the people I care about. And I can do like a Winston draft, or I can get 8 people to fire and we can have a good time. Same with just cracking open 4 commander decks and just having a pre-con battle or whatever. It's a very versatile format, which I really, really like.
Yeah,
I like that answer. It's a very good answer.
yeah, it is.
Thank you.
That's to be fair, that's one thing that I never thought about. Obviously, is Cube. Like I enjoy Cube, and I enjoy like most people's cubes of just this is the archetypes I want to build into it. But I never really thought about it as a time capsule in the sense that literally you could pick this up for X amount of years and it'll still be the same because you've basically made every single game piece almost. Obviously, there's keeping a legacy deck or keeping a pauper deck and keeping it there for 40 years. If you then think, oh, I'm going to go to my local game store and play this in 40 years' time, you're going to rock up and you're going to be like, here's all these Yu-Gi-Oh cards, my attack's level 9,000. You're like, what is going on? Like, that won't work. Do you know what I mean? But obviously...
You won't even know what all the cards are if they're all like secret layer illegible stuff as well. You're like, what is this?
And every single universe beyond will be having Pauper, the One Ring will be common and all sorts of different other things. We'll have one piece on there.
But that's the way I see Cube personally. And I think it's a really cool way just to see how people change the design of like Magic as well. So there's some really cool cubes that I played. So there's my friend Dan has a colorless cube where every card is colorless. So you've got stuff like Eldrazi, you've got like Original Affinity, all that kind of stuff, which is quite fun. All the Devoid cards because they're technically colorless as well. There's also my friend Zach has a Cascade cube where you start with a Maelstrom Nexus emblem. So every first spell you cast has Cascade. And that happens like you just have an emblem. So on the first spell you cast every turn, Cascade. So stuff like Venerated Loxodon become really good. The Soul, the Mox Tantalite, the Suspend card is really good in the format because you can just like cascade into it. And it's just really exciting just to see these different like designs and nods, and they really work and they're really fun. Obviously Vintage Cube is like the premier way to play Cube, and don't get me wrong, it is really, really fun. I just wish WotC would tap into things like Legacy Cube, because Legacy Cube's quite good. Even like a modern Cube, like I'm in the middle of building a modern 2016 FNM style cube where it's everything pre-Horizons. So you've got stuff like Snapcaster Mage, you've got Birthing Pod, you've got Splinter Twin, you've got, Dark Confidant, and these like cards are like super good. And so it's just, I'm looking to build like an old school modern cube because I love that point in modern, because that's when I got into it. And I think it'd be really cool just to time capsule that and not have to worry about Furies and Griefs and Urza Sagas and all the other nonsense that's come out since.
It's definitely weird that I have to, maybe it's the people I talk to, that it seems to be that's the point in time that everybody loves modern.
Well,
It's
everyone
nostalgic.
gets Modern Horizons.
It's nostalgic because not only was that modern really, really fun, because Modern Horizons has really changed the texture of
Yeah.
modern, let's be honest, but also it was at a point where Pro Tours were regularly a thing, SCGs were readily a thing, coverage was readily a thing. So it's just that whole period is very nostalgic because we could consume Magic coverage and content on a weekend, like every weekend, and that was great. And we all miss it. It's not going to come back in that way, unfortunately. But I think that would be a really cool way to make a cube just to celebrate modern in that era and have these like really old school powerful cards that aren't good anymore. Look at Tarmogoyf is a good example here. And I just think that's a really good way to nod it because people will also, newer people will come into modern and they'll be like, do you want to play modern 10 years ago? You know, here's a cube and we'll show you what it's like.
Yeah.
And it'll be completely different and it'll be a good experience.
Definitely. It's pretty cool. I definitely like that answer. I like that tangent. That was fantastic. It's making me want to build a cube almost like, and I only play Pauper, so
The problem is the
Pauper.
cost, but Peasant and Pauper cubes tend to be quite cheap. You can build my Peasant cube if you take out like the Force of Wills and the Demonic Tutors for like $200, which is pretty good. But obviously, cube is one of those things that you kind of need a regular player base for. I'm happy for people to not touch my cube for like 6 months. I'm fine with that. Because I know I'll get people eventually. And as I said before, you can like Winston draft it, which is like the 1v1 drafting, or I can turn it into a 2-bert, which is like a cube that's 1v1. But it's just cool to have the thing that I can just be like, yep, someone want a cube, you know, if someone says cube, I'm just like, here, right now, hold it with me, just in case.
Yeah, my problem is that to play cube, I'd have to leave the house, and that's my downside.
That's true.
That's
Magic Online.
Exactly. That's unfortunately where it stays. I guess moving on to that, since we're obviously on about time capsules as well. Nice tangent, to be fair. The question is, what is your favorite deck of all time? And following that, what is your favorite deck in Pauper currently?
Favorite deck of all time is Azorius Monument back in it's a standard deck in around 2017 when Amonkhet came out. It's basically a blue-white tempo-y creature focus deck that uses the card of Ketras Monument. It also runs my favorite card, Fraben Inspector, where you just make lots of 1/1. So you play lots of like white-based creatures, so you can trigger a Ketras Monument. But it also had stuff like Spell Queller as well, which was really cool. You had like Bygone Bishop, so you had like this spirits theme, like this evasive theme as well. You also ran I can't remember the other card, but basically it was just like a blue-white creature deck that centers around a Ketras Monument, and you just bounced stuff, replayed stuff, and you just made lots of 1/1s and you just overwhelmed the board, and it was really, really fun. That standard period was really good for me. Like I did well competitively, but I just enjoy those style of decks. The kind of blue I like playing in Magic in general are like the creature tempo style decks. So stuff like Bant Spirits is a really good example here. Just, you know, that not playing hard counters, but I'm playing like a Spell Queller or a Rattle Chains to like try and blow out your removal spell, that kind of thing. And I remember the Azorius Monument mirrors being really fun as well. It was one of the rare mirrors that was actually quite good to play because I played enough Tron mirrors and they're miserable. I hate Tron
Every
mirrors.
mirror is miserable, but clearly not this one.
Yeah. Like Mono Blue Tempo in Standard was also quite good. The Burchett Blue was also really good. That mirror was also really interesting. But Azorius Monument was just a really fun deck, and a Ketras Monument was just one of my favorite cards to play in Standard. So I just jammed it in everything. There was like a Mono White Vampires deck, like when original Ixalan came out, that I also played the Ketras Monument version of that as well, which was really fun. As for Pauper decks, so my favorite deck I enjoy playing right now is the riff on like Boris Synthesizer. Experimental Synthesizer is probably one of my favorite cards that has come to Pauper in recent times. I just love the design of it. I can't believe it's quite an uncommon. It feels like it should be an uncommon, honestly. Just
definitely.
with the value you can get out of it. But I just love the idea of like Glint Hawking and course skyfishing and bringing it back and then replaying it, playing your land for the turn off the synthesizer. At worst, you can get a 2/2 samurai. It's just this really cool like tempo soft card advantage that is just really fun to play. And right now I have the Jeskai Affinity version built, the one that incorporates all that glitters, but also has experimental synthesizer, but you also have forecast, which is the reason you're playing the blue. That's also quite fun as well. So anything that's like creature advantagey style is pretty cool. I'm also close to building the Oars of Ephemerate deck with Tithing Blade and Core Skyfisher because that looks really fun as well. That seems to be like my style of deck too. So I'm going to be building that one next.
My problem is with that, I love that deck. I really like the idea of Black White Blade, but I really, really cannot find a list I'm happy with. That is my problem. There's so many different random good white cards. It's like fit them onto one deck.
Initiative seems to be quite good, especially on the higher cost cards. Less we talk about the lower cost ones, the better. But but no, those style of decks tend to be quite fun. As I said, I used to play a lot of Bogles and a lot of like old school Affinity. Coming into Synthesize is just a nice evolution on that. I think just the way design of commons has occurred in the last 4 years.
But no, that's nice. I really do like, to be fair, I do really like the whole red-white interaction. Usually I do like to get greedy and pair it with a third colour.
Yeah.
Tend to lean towards black because, I don't know, maybe it's my heart or something.
The Mardu one does look sweet. I just really like Forecast and I like drawing cards. So
I like it.
Yep.
My next question is more about traveling and playing Magic. Obviously, you travel between the UK and the US quite often. Have you found much difference between playing Magic in the UK and then playing Magic in the US?
In the US, events are bigger, which makes sense because the US is bigger. People are more willing to travel across the country to play in events, where in the UK it's like anything over a 45-minute drive is seen as a massive chore because we're much smaller, right? We don't really travel a lot as like in the country, just as British people. We don't like to go far. So it was really nice to go to some like US events and they were just like packed and people just like, yeah, I traveled like from the other end of the US to be here, and I'm like, that's insane because it's just like an SCG con. It's not even like a pro tour or like a Magic con or anything like that. It's just like an SCG con, like a 10K. But events tend to be bigger. The players tend to be better as well, I find. I'll say the US players tend to be better than the UK players, but I don't think they're better than the European players, if that makes sense. Because European players are pretty, like Italians and Spaniards are pretty good at Magic. But yeah, it's just really cool just to be in like these big events, and it's just, we don't really get those in the UK. We don't get these conventions. We have like the Axiom Gathering events, which are like Command Fest, but they're not your, multi-hundred people that just wander in and out and, having 400 people play a main event kind of thing. So it's nice. I wish they existed in the UK, but I just don't think the demand is there, unfortunately, just because we're a tiny country. And people play Commander, so
Yeah. I think there's
it's
like
difficult.
space for like a GP style event, but it would be like one a year type thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's like I like the mega events Axiom did because they were pretty good. The problem is that the pricing, because everything's just expensive now because of like inflation and all these other variables. Like paying £70 for like a 200-person RCQ just doesn't seem like attractive to me.
No, definitely.
It's like you're basically paying for like a GP entry fee at this point, but you're only getting to play like one day. Maybe that's like old school, like pre-pandemic logic coming into it. But US events are great. They're fun. I wish people would wear more masks because COVID's still a thing, but I can't do anything about that, unfortunately.
But yeah, that seems pretty good because obviously I'm not surprised that they are bigger and generally You know, I do take offense to the whole, you know, American players are better, but whatever. I'll let that one go. It's okay. I'm not hurt.
Because there's also more of them.
Yeah, well, that's true. Laws of
but
averages and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's just more of them. There's a much bigger dedicated grinder circuit in America in general, regionally and just countrywide, where you don't really get that in the UK anymore. And a lot of the good UK players that do, they kind of move into the US anyway. Look at Sam Rolfe, Autumn Bachette. These people did well because they did American circuits, because that's where everything is, unfortunately, because Wizards are an American company. But I recommend going to one at some point. They're pretty fun. You'll get a lot of people asking you, do you know the King of England because you're English?
Yeah.
I've tweeted a few times. But oh my God, you're English. It's like, well, yeah. Who else do I sound like? Like, have you not heard an Englishman before? It's kind of funny, but I do recommend it. And car prices are just cheaper as well, because there's just more of it in the US compared to your TCG players. A lot cheaper than Card Market, for example.
To be fair, obviously we were talking before the podcast that obviously you picked up like Dust to Dusts for like next to nothing. So
yeah, I paid like $4 each, which seems pretty good. And I got them off TCG Player because I needed like 4, because I've been trying to get 4 for ages, because I don't want to like buy 4 from 4 different vendors at like €6-7 each. So while I was in the US, I was like, cool, I'm going to pick up a playset of Dust to Dust. I'm going to pick up a dozen Ephemerates, because getting like those in multiples is really hard from any UK retailer right now. And I'm going to play these in Pauper quite a bit and in Commander, so I just kind of stocked up the here and there, which is quite nice. I wish, you know, UK, EU, and Brexit was a lot nicer about these things, but it's not. So, and I realise I'm quite lucky to be in that position where I can travel to the US and just pick up a bunch of cards. I know everyone can't do that.
But yeah, definitely not a bad one. Definitely cool to see. Obviously, I do wish we did have them fire more often. To be fair, like obviously like more bigger events in the UK, but you know, to be fair, I generally get in a hump as soon as I have to drive to Penrith to then come down. So
yeah, it's like we're not big car drivers, as in we're not really willing to drive far, but public transport's also not great, because like the rail is privatized and stuff like that, so it's very, very difficult to get around events. As much as the Americans think, oh, it must be nice to have like accessible public transport, and it's like, yeah, but it doesn't work half the time because of privatization and all this stuff. It would be cool to have like a proper circuit. It's cool that Axion are doing like the gathering style events again, but hitting various LGSs. That's a nice touch. But it would be cool just to have like an actual scene, like the Pauper Open Cup thing that happens in the UK. That seems to be looking really well as well. So
I think a big thing for us as well with those Axion events is they're actually in the north. Like we don't have to drive 5 hours down the country to get to an event.
Yeah. And then you don't have to be in London, which is like the worst place to have events.
Yeah.
Like it's expensive. It's just expensive, and it's just difficult to get around as well. So it's kind of nice they do it in places like Birmingham, which is a really good middle ground, because it's in the middle of the country, because it's the Midlands. But it would be nice to have those style of events again. It'd be great just to have like a Magic Con in London or in Birmingham, but I doubt it's going to happen.
We can hope.
Yeah, I just want GPs
Brexit.
back.
I want GPs back. Brexit makes everything weird though, which is a shame. It's cheaper to have it somewhere in Europe than it is the UK, because you don't have to pay less fees or whatever. I don't know. But
oh well,
we can dream.
We can dream and hope. So obviously you've just had your latest TCG article on the back of the Shuffle Up and Play as well. Yep. And it dived into obviously different archetypes of, you know, what Orzhov does, what Selesnya does, and all that sort of stuff. What is your favourite card in your cube right now? And what is your favourite secret archetype that you actually don't plan in for, that you've seen or you've built around?
So my favourite card in my cube right now. This is a
Bath
really
Raven Inspector. Assuming that's in there.
Oh, I'm not gonna say Raven Inspector because that's an easy one. It's probably Ninja of the Deep Powers.
Okay.
I really like Big fan of the card anyway. It's probably my favorite blue card ever printed. I just really like ninjutsuing stuff, and there's a lot of shadow creatures in the cube as well. So you can play like this blue white sort of evasive move circuit hacker, ninja deep hours, draw lots of card things. I think my favorite secret quote unquote archetype in the cube, there is a wolves archetype, which is in Bant. So you have stuff like Assault Formation, which is now an uncommon. So you can run stuff like Wall of Denial, Wall of Omens. You've got a couple of the Wall Matter cards from Dominaria United that like tutor up walls. And you've got Axebane Guardian, which sees play in Pauper. That's in the cube as well. And you can just build this board of walls and then have like Assault Formation kill people. I think that's my favorite like secret archetype, because people don't really draft around it, but when they see the Assault Formation, you just like, wait, do I go for it? Sort of thing. It's like, I have a Wall Denial, do I go for it? You also have Mnemonic Wall as well, so if you have like any removal, you can just bring it back. It can kill people. I think that's my secret favorite archetype in the cube. It doesn't go off often because Walls is like really niche in terms of like a creature type. But I'm glad it exists, because people see Axebane Guardian and they're like, oh hell yeah, I can just like go off, as we've seen with Wonder Wolves in Pauper. So yeah, I would say that's my favorite archetype in the cube, just because it's nuanced, but when people see the Assault Formation, they're like, wait, do I force this for laugh? Because you can do that in cube. You just have a good time. You're not forced to take the optimal line, because there's no stakes.
Going back to obviously your favorite card, Ninja of the Deep Hours, I really do like the ninjutsu mechanic. Really do. Like, I think it's a great mechanic. However, I must admit, Spell Stutter Sprite has definitely made me hate that mechanic a bit more than I probably should.
Yeah, that card's a little good. We've talked that one on the panel a few times. Just this card's pretty good.
I'm not.
Not saying we'll ban it or anything. We've just talked about the card extensively.
It's one of those that's just been good forever as well. It's never been like super busted broken, but it's always just been like, this is really good.
Yeah, it's just consistent. It's been consistent, even when Cloud of Fairies was a thing, and then when that got banned, it's still pretty good, because it thanks to stuff like Fairy Seer, thanks Modern Horizons, it just all snowballs, right? Spell Starter Spray is a reason to dislike the card. I get it.
I do find it quite amusing though that obviously at one point I would like to say I probably read please ban Spell Stutter Sprite comment to basically then fairies being non-existent up until like Bako, obviously the grinder, decides, you know what, actually fairies is still really good. Here's the list.
I've seen comments that we should ban Sprite, because it's a really good blue card, like just a generically good blue card that's been good for a long time. And it's like, I can see why you think this, and we watch a lot of cards in Pauper. We don't necessarily make that public, but Sprite is one of the ones we tend to look at, because it's been such a role player for so long. But at the same time, it's part of the identity of Pauper.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons you play the format, and people really love fairies. It has this nostalgia, because Lorwyn was a really great set, and people love these typal matter synergies, and fairies just one that people really like for some reason. It was before my time, but I can get it.
It was my first Pauper deck, actually, was mono blue Fair with like Daze and Gush and Spell Stutter and Bone Splitter on the Spell Stutter.
That sounds great. I think the only Pauper deck I played that got banned or had a banned card from it was the mono blue Delver deck with Mystic Sanctuary, and you looped back Deprive. Yeah, that was pretty fun. But Mystic Sanctuary definitely needed to get banned.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it while I could.
Card's totally fine. What are you on about? There's no issues with Mystic Sanctuary whatsoever.
It should be in Dan, and that's it. That's one format it's fine
in. Moving on, I guess, to banned cards. We're kind of moving on, touching on the Pauper questions, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I just want to know your personal thoughts on the Swift Spear ban. I know, obviously, you and the PFP as a whole banned it, but basically just were you advocating for it to be banned? Were you fine with it? Like, because it is
So
a very grey area, I think, in general.
the card is clearly very good. Like historically speaking, Swiss beer is very, very good. And the ban was unanimous. There wasn't a one person, two person wasn't against it. It was like a this needs to go decision. Um, we didn't really know. So when it comes to like discussing stuff in the PFP, we don't. So when I say we, it's like us. That isn't Gavin, because obviously Gavin knows a lot of things because he works for Watsy. We don't always get to know what is downshifted because Gavin's like super busy. So sometimes our conversations with Gavin can be sparse. But for Commander Masters, we didn't really know what was being downshifted. It was like one of the few sets we didn't get any correspondence. So when we saw the Swiss Spear come in as as a common, it was just like I was like, okay, this is a thing. Like this is something we need to acknowledge because historically Swiss Spear is very good. You know, it's still played every format as legal. It is now because it's in standard and pioneer and in modern. And given that red is historically been quite good anyway, like prior to this downshift, this is something we should just like keep an eye on because games are just going to be so quick. It's going to make a lot of slower decks just immediately redundant because people will die in turn 3, turn 4. So when we saw the downshift, it was just like, yep. So that's the thing. Obviously, Dread Return was also a big downshift at this time, but no one's unfortunately able to do anything with Dread Return. And All That Glitters was the other one that we were just like, okay, this is like huge because obviously Affinity is a thing. We have the Indestructible Lands for Modern Horizons. They all synergize together. So it's just like, cool. It's clear Commander Masters is going to do something to Pauper. Like these 3 cards alone, actually the 2 being All That Glitters or Swiss Spear. So I remember saying at this, like the second it got downshifted and we knew about it, it's just like we need to like pay attention to this card because my gut instinct that it was going to be too good for Pauper anyway, and I think a lot of people agreed at this time. But we can't just go, yeah, let's ban it just straight off because obviously we need to see how it plays out. We can be wrong. Obviously, we also wanted data to support, you know, our intuition because I'm not someone that likes to make a decision without the data backing it up and considering we can get access to that data. And when I mean by data, that Magic Online leagues and challenges, it's that data. We get access to that through Watsy. So yeah, I wasn't exactly excited when Swiss Bear got downshifted because I knew how good it was, but I had to see what happened. Obviously, in Pauper, you can't just be like, yeah, we need to ban this. You need to see how, because someone might make something that makes it bad. Like Pauper players, are super creative and innovative. They could find an answer to it, but it turned out to be too strong. We had to ban it, and it just nullified a lot of decks, especially online, that people just wanted to play, like Sky Ephemerate in the slower decks, because you would die on turn 3. And then the Goblin Tomb Raider got previewed. It's just like and I was like, we really need to do something. And admittedly, we're a little slow to ban it because we needed the data. Watsy were fairly slow in getting that data to us, and we didn't want to 100% make the decision without that data backing it up. And the data told us everything, so we banned it.
To be fair, I was actually going to say sort of something about the data anyways, but I would have thought the data would have shown its win rate not being insane to start with, because obviously it is a great card, like, don't get me wrong, but obviously when people are packing like 8 Hydra Blasts and, you know,
this is
4 end of festivities, that'll obviously affect the data generally, because obviously...
And it just affects how sideboarding is as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, it felt correct to ban the card that people were just afraid to play against. And also another thing we have to look at when it's like league data and just Magic Online data in general is how many people play Pauper. If that number goes down, that means people aren't wanting to play Pauper. So we need to do something about it.
No,
and it was clear that less people were playing Pauper challenges, but red decks were going up. So it's like, there's clearly something here that we need to address, and we need to figure out what card to remove. And it's just like, I'm just pointing at Swiss Bears, like, just get rid of this. Like,
Mm.
they shouldn't have been downshifted. Like, for what it's worth, we don't get any say on downshifts. We just have
No.
to manage what's he like
Mm.
release.
Mhm.
So that was a wild downshift.
Yeah.
Like, I hope that doesn't happen again because I think that was a little too good for Pauper.
Definitely.
I think my next one is sort of following on from the cards getting added by downshifting type argument or type topic. But how do you feel about the rate in which cards are currently like added to Pauper? I think particularly for me, the end of 2023 seemed like pretty mental for just card after card after card coming into Pauper with Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings and then Commander Masters and then Wilds of Eldraine, all within 3 months and all basically having like 5, 6, 7 cards that go straight into Pauper and see loads of play.
You also had Doctor Who. Fortunately, there was
Yeah.
no downshifts in Doctor Who pre-cons, but that's something we have to acknowledge. It's really, really hard, and I think that's part of the reason why the panel exists, just because there are more commons than any other rarity in Magic,
Yeah.
like per set. There's just more commons, and obviously when all the 3 mana Monarch cards came out during Commander Legends, and this was like pre PFP, and then that was really slow to be addressed, and all these other powerful cards that were really slow to be addressed. It's like there are enough people that care about Pauper where there needs to be someone or a group of people that needs to look after this stuff, because stuff will slip through the cracks, because Wizards do not design cards with Pauper in mind, because Pauper does not make money. Pauper will never make Wizards money, and that's fine. But you need people in place to like safeguard against the random common card that's in universes beyond Fallout, whatever, that could break the meta. It's like look at Legacy. Legacy's the same reason. Like you have Triumph of St. Catherine, which is a Warhammer 40k card. Really, really, really good in Legacy. It's not busted, but it's really, really good. And given just like the amount of commons and the amount of releases is almost monthly at this point, there's just a lot for us to look at and consider. And with that, things change all the time because new cards are injected at pretty much every set, combined with like downshifts, masters releases, and then you've got your actual standard release as well that we need to look at combine. And we also have to look at commander product, just like commander precons that might affect Pauper as well. There is just so much stuff to look at. It is overwhelming at times, and we try and get everything, but you have to understand we are just going to miss a few times because there's just so much of it, and we just do our best to correct anything we can do, but we don't always get like a heads up either. So it's just like we have to make deal with it and just get on with it.
I feel like the Commander precons, especially, I guess not so much the new stuff like Doctor Who, but when they like do reprints, I don't get why they do downshifts and things like that in Commander decks.
Yeah.
When you get one card in the deck, the rarity is completely irrelevant. Just leave it at what it is.
Yeah, it's really frustrating, but it's just something we have to acknowledge. Like we can ignore Arena because Pauper doesn't acknowledge Arena rarities at all. That's an official stance.
Thankfully.
But thankfully, but it's just such a broad net that we have to cover, just because there's just so many commons coming out, and then stuff just miss out. Like I'll go back to Experimental Synthesizer. This was a card that was revealed in like the last day of the deck, like the gallery dump for Kamigawa Dynasty. No one got to preview that. It was just like, oh, here's a card, and everyone's just like, this seems really sweet, and then it's changed the texture of Pauper, and no one picked up on it to begin with. Like if people who play Pauper a bunch aren't going to pick up on it, there's a chance we might not either. It's just the rate of product combined with the amount of commons does make it hard. We do our best. Like we do the best with what we can, but we can't tell WotC to stop printing stuff because they need to make money.
I think sort of tying into that about cards being added to Pauper, this particular one is the hill that I have chosen to die on. What's your opinion on the cards? I guess the new cards being black border.
This is my personal opinion, not like reflective of the PFP or anything. I do not like them. I like my cards to stay silver bordered because that was the biggest charm for like unsets, is to have that silver border. The fact that you're putting a little acorn and making it black border is just, it kind of, it's, I feel like it's either Hasbro or WotC trying to justify printing these unsets to try and make money.
Yeah.
This is like the compromise WotC had to came up with, because otherwise Mark Rosewater wouldn't be able to produce it. So I think that's the compromise. Stuff like the name sticker goblin, stuff like that. I do wish they were like just uncards, so they were silver borders, so they weren't like Pauper legal. But that's just another thing that we have to consider now. If there's another unset, is it going to happen again? But personal stance, I think they should have stayed silver bordered. But if they stay silver bordered, I don't think Infinity would have existed, because people wouldn't have bought packs. People wouldn't be able to get their cool Galaxy Shocklands or, you know, weird Commander cards, because even though Commander is like basically rule 0 at this point, they don't want to play with silver border cards for some reason. And then also that's muddled up Legacy a little bit as well, because name sticker goblin sees playing mono red. But yeah, I wish they kept it silver border, but I don't think Infinity would have existed if that didn't happen. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I just wish, you know, people could print stuff without needing to make profit all the time. I think that's the bigger problem.
We're slowly getting all the PFP on the page of blanket ban on uncards.
Yeah.
We've got you and Weber on board.
It also like messes up Magic Online as well. Like people haven't been able to play it on Magic Online just because it's so random and just messes up the way Magic Online, you know, is built. You know, if it can't work on the client that people play Pauper on, then it's a bit of a problem, right?
Yeah, I think especially with the Goblin, it's been a weird one, because we sort of had the issue of, the card's just not on Magic Online, so you just can't play it. But now the Goblin sort of is on Magic Online, but it's different to the card in paper. So the deck functions differently in both formats.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
There's one thing that we're trying to do on the PFP, is to not have a segregation of paper and online. And that is one thing that's been really good about Daybreak Games, who now run Magic Online. They deal with everything Magic Online related. They've been really good with us, so we can talk to Daybreak going, hey, can we get these, you know, random commons from, you know, Commander Masters, or Embiggen, for example, from the unset, can we get that into treasure chests so people can open it and play it in their Pauper decks? Can we like up the open rates just so people can get a hold of this card? And Daybreak are like, yeah, that's fine, we can do that for you, that makes sense. So they have been really good at trying to get these weird quirky commons that just don't exist on Magic Online in packs that you can open into treasure chests so people can play the cards, which is really cool of them, because Pauper makes them literal no money. But it's just trying to narrow the gap of, you know, we want tabletop and you know, online to be the same, because that's what it should be. But obviously, if a weird Universes Beyond card comes out, like go back to Triumph of St. Catherine from Warhammer 40k, the reason it's not on Magic Online is because there's a licensing issue. It's like there's an issue where between Games Workshop and WotC, they haven't been able to, they either didn't like figure it out in the deal, or Games Workshop didn't want it because they have their own digital card game, so they felt it could be a conflict of interest. So that's probably not going to appear on Magic Online, and Legacy is now segregated from this, you know, tabletop where you can play these cards and you can't play them online. And the cards themselves happen to be quite good. That could happen in Pauper at some point, but that is out of our hands, because just due to the nature of Universes Beyond. I hope it doesn't happen, but it could.
You're telling me my Jund Food sticker deck isn't good in Magic Online? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm just saying there could be a really good like food card in like Fallout that might not be able to be, you know, on Magic Online,
and that's
for
it.
You know, external factors, which is not ideal. I don't want that in Pauper, but we can't do anything about that.
Yeah,
as much as we would like to. yeah, so it's what it is.
It is a strange one as well, because you're probably getting to the point where if that's such a disparity, like your only way of fixing that for you guys is ban that card so it can't be played in paper, and that's ultimately
Yeah,
probably not an answer you want to do.
yeah, we don't want to ban stuff for accessibility issues
Exactly.
when actually us banning it in paper makes it more inaccessible.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the right intention. Hopefully Pauper, that doesn't happen in Pauper, because commons are a little different to like your rares and mythic rares. But I am very weary of it, and who knows what will happen. Maybe there's a Marvel card in 2025 that's like a common that's super good and it's not on Magic Online or whatever. But I do feel people in Legacy, like, who have that problem, Daybreak have been really good to us. We just send them a list going, yeah, can you just pop these into treasure chests, like up the rate? And they're like, yeah, cool, that's fine. That's no, because that's such a low lift for them to do, because it's just commons that are already in the system. So
No, it's pretty good, because Daybreak, to be fair, I must admit, from it being announced of when Daybreak was taken over, everyone was all doom and gloom. This is the end of Magic Online, and it's went the complete opposite. I actually think Daybreak is the best thing to happen to Magic Online. It's fun. They are fantastic.
yeah,
Like their
they are
improvements.
really they are really good, and they're really open to feedback as well. They also because they changed some of the tournament like prize structure and some of the Pauper events.
Yeah.
And people were kicking off about it, and rightly so. And we had a talk with Daybreak as, hey, we've had some feedback from, people who play Pauper basically for a living at this point, because a lot of them are from Brazil and this is their income. You know, we're getting some, negative feedback about this new structure. Maybe if you do it like this and this, people would like it. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. We'll change it to that. And they did. And people are happy now. So they are really open to feedback, which is a really refreshing thing, given, the way online and social media is these days. It's really refreshing just to have a company that actually cares about what they do.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's great, as someone who's on the panel who's trying to, help cultivate a format while making sure Magic Online is all fine and good. It's really good to have them on our side.
So the two things to note from that is, if we want something changed, we need to speak to Baco and the other Brazilian players to speak to you. Right? Got that one.
Well, it's not just Brazilian players, but it was fairly unanimous.
Yeah, it was, to be fair. It was, to be fair, but
it was pretty unanimous, but we have to respect the people that play this as a living as well. We have to acknowledge that. That's not to say anytime they argue, disagree about something, it's going to get changed, because they people can be wrong about things, but that incident was like, why have they changed this? It should be like this, and now it's changed, and people are happy, and Pauper events are firing, which is what we want, because most people play online.
And the second thing I got from this, there's no hope that my command performance sticker in my makeshift goblin is going to happen. Sticker in my makeshift munitions is going to happen soon. I just want to give a makeshift munitions death touch. That is all I want to do.
Just play paper then.
I have to go outside for that.
It's fairly. I don't know if Daybreak can fix it, because we haven't spoken to them in a little while. I knew they were like trying, but we haven't really spoken to them. They're obviously really busy as well.
You're telling me Pauper's not their main focus when they're God damn it.
Oh, I wish Pauper was the main focus, but it's just one of those like little things that they'll get round to at some point. But there's obviously, because there's like bugs happening all the time. Like there's a bug right now that they're fixing where the client randomly closes, and it's like, that's probably more important than fixing sticker gobbling.
Yeah, I did say that when I loaded in before this. I was like, what's going on? And then all I seen was all these tweets of like, oh my god, Magic Online's shitting itself.
I can't play with 64-person vintage cube draft. Help. Which is fair. You paid for it. You should be allowed to play. But no, Daybreak are great. We talk to them quite a bit. So
that is sweet, because they are actually fun. I have no qualms with them whatsoever. I guess speaking of going outside, touching grass and playing some paper. See, look at that tangent. Look at it. You may have started to see, obviously, a lot of the UK-based Pauper events popping up, like the Northern Pauper Open being the big one. They've started to do, like, kind of, Dan, by the way, is fantastic. The guy who runs the Northern Pauper Open in Leeds. He's trying to get every local game store possible that wants to play Pauper or plays Pauper to run leagues to hopefully eventually feed like a, something bigger, which is great.
Yeah.
Great to see. My actual question
Really
is,
good to see.
are there any that you are interested in attending to or plan to attend to, either UK or even international? If you want to go to God of Pauper, I am all for that too. Whatever you're planning on doing.
So Dan has DM'd me a few times about, attending these events, because Leeds isn't too far from me. So I'm in Preston, which is near Manchester. So Leeds is like a 90-minute train journey, which I'm happy to do because it's like a direct train. But every time Dan has gone, hey, there's this Pauper event, do you want to attend it? It's like I'm either in America or I'm doing another event. And he DM'd me the other week going, hey, do you want to go to this Pauper event? It's like, that's the same weekend as MC Chicago, and I'm in Chicago for that, so I can't do it. So I do really want to go to these events. It's just the timing is just always kind of bad. I will be at Paupergeddon in June though, which is the one in Pisa, which is the I believe it is the
16th,
weekend before the Amsterdam Pro Tour.
It
So it's like
is.
the second, I believe it's the second weekend of June. So the plan is they intentionally organise it that weekend so people can go to Paupergeddon and then go from Pisa, Italy to Amsterdam for the Pro Tour for the MagicCon. So I will be there. Gavin Verhey's also going to be there, and there's also some talk of the Professor turning up as well. But that is, I don't know if that's confirmed. It's something that we're talking about because Heisen, who's on the PFP, he's helping organise it all, and I've been invited to go, so I'll be going to that. But going back to England, I would love to attend these events. It's just every time they come up, it's like, yeah, I'm just in 4,000 miles in the wrong direction.
But yeah, that'll be great to obviously get that pub again, especially that'll be great to go to that pub again. I'll take the Cumbrian out of there. Because, especially with that lineup that potentially may be going. It's the
Gavin will definitely be there because Gavin, like me, he's also going to Amsterdam afterwards. So it was just like it makes sense to just add that on as the start of the journey. So Gavin will be there. I'll be there. There's also going to be commentary. There's going to be actual live coverage of Paupergeddon, which I'll be doing with Will Hall, who's another UK guy. So we're going to be covering that. So that would be sweet, and it would be really cool just to try and like hype up, get people into Pauper coverage and stuff. But yeah, that's the only Pauper event I have planned this year. Hopefully I could go to one of these UK Pauper events when I'm, not traveling. It's just bad timing, unfortunately.
But I do believe he's obviously planning. I usually think usually there's like 3 to 4 in the year, so hopefully one of them lines up quite nicely. And I do believe he's trying a bigger one at the end of the year. So
yeah, so for those interested, Paupergeddon Pisa happens 15th to the 16th of June. Tickets aren't out yet. I just got confirmation of that date like fairly recently. And it makes sense to have it before the Pro Tour so people can add that as a potential stop. But I'll be there, and it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, it does sound like a great event. I do believe there is a festival on at Pisa at the same weekend, like some candle festival or something. But well, little do I know. But yeah.
Also, and I guess there is another thing that I'm doing that's Pauper related. So at MagicCon Chicago, there's a Pauper Cup going on, which is like a Pauper event they're running on one of the days. I think it's on the Saturday. I'll be playing in it, and I believe Paige, who's also on the PFP, is also going to play in it. So that's like a cool thing that Wizards have put on. They've actually put on like an actual Pauper event at the MC. Hopefully they'll have one in Amsterdam. I'll play that one too.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's cool that these Pauper events are just like cropping up, and WotC like acknowledge it. Not going to be a RCQ format because it's never going to be that good, unfortunately. But it's cool that you can do something and get prizes.
Yeah,
I think that's
definitely.
a really nice thing.
Secret information: what would you be planning on playing currently if you were to go?
Currently, I'd play Jeskai Affinity because that's the thing I've been playing for the last 3 weeks to a month. But I could play Black White as well because I really like the idea of Black White.
Yeah,
but depends how the meta shakes out. But I do like Jeskai in general in Pauper, so I'll probably play something Jeskai orientated.
I remember the days when everything Jeskai ran Mole Drifter. Those were the days.
I played Jeskai Ephemerate for a while. That was pretty fun. It's just the mirror matches are so long.
I actually think my opinion is I think Murmur Mystics made it even worse. It's made it so
Yes,
more so, but
agreed.
it's like a load of one more. God, here we go. I'm gonna peck you to death.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
guess my next question sort of ties into that Murmur and Mystic comment with it being a downshift. I was just thinking, basically, obviously, you're very into Peasant Cube and obviously into Pauper, so your perspective on downshift is probably quite an interesting one. We mentioned before Gonti coming down to an uncommon,
Yeah.
pretty sweet for Peasant Cube, but then
Oh yeah.
Monastery Swiftspear coming down from uncommon to common, pretty controversial for Pauper.
All that glitters you can add in that conversation as well.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of
So,
people have been talking about that.
what are your thoughts on downshift as a whole, and then in relation to Pauper?
I like downshifts because the reason downshifts exist primarily is to help the limited format of that set. It is not. It is very rarely to do with Pauper. It is thinking, hey, how can I make this limited format fun for a set so people buy boxes and stuff? Downshifts is a really good tool to use that because it frees up room for new commons and rares potentially, which is good. I also like downshifts in a pauper sense because it is a really cool way to reinvigorate and freshen up the format. Monastery Swiftspear is a very extreme example because it was very, very dominant. But there are downshifts that are good, like Murmuring Mystic's a good one. I think Boris Elite, that's in Ravnica Remastered, is going to be a fine one, as is Judge's Familiar, which is also a downshift in Ravnica Remastered. And I think it's a really cool way just to spice up Pauper a little bit, despite that not being the intention in Watsy's eyes. It's just a cool tool that no other constructor format gets access to because there's a rarity limitation in place. Overall, I love the idea of downshifts just because it for those reasons, and also it creates an affordability thing as well. Like if it comes a common, it's going to be a little cheaper than it would be an uncommon. And if it becomes like dominant, see Swiftspear, then we can do something about it. But generally, I am positive for downshifts because it's a very unique thing that Pauper gets access to. So we should be making the most of it. It's a really cool way to invigorate the format without unbanning stuff. It's just, I think it's just neat. Marge Simpson meme here. I think it's a really cool thing that we get to utilize.
To be fair, I do think it is quite good. Obviously, double masters with them downshifts, commander masters in particular with obviously all the glitters and all that sort of good stuff. Like, it is a interesting one from our perspective. Obviously, it creates content. I get to obviously look at obviously all these downshifts, and most, as you say, most of the no other format I'll look at it and be like, oh, this is just a reprint set. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh my god, what has been downshifted? Which I do agree. Like, don't get me wrong, it is definitely a very, very exciting time for Pauper, for sure.
Yeah.
Nice to do.
As someone who has a peasant cube, downshifts are like the big thing for me because it's like, cool, what do I get to play as a common or a common? You had the goblin that the name escapes me right now. That was a rare in a core set. The goblin that sacrifices and it exiles from the top. Dark Dweller.
Oh, Dark Dweller Coral. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was a rare. Then it went straight to a common, which is never happens. And that was really cool for Pauper because it gave the Goblin combo deck an extra way to like combo out, which was really sweet. But yeah, like I always look at the downshifts because I predominantly think of cube when I see downshifts because downshifts to uncommon happen a lot more than downshifts to common. Traditionally, so I'm like, cool, what cool uncommons can I add to my cube or whatever? And then if there's like all that glitters or a Swiftspear in that's a common, it's like, okay, this is a big deal because it doesn't affect the cube because they are already uncommon. However, once I put my Pauper hat on, it's like, okay, we need to look at the downshifts to common. How is this going to affect Pauper? But generally, that's the first thing I look for in any like remastered or mastered release. Is downshifts. Like historically, as the Pauper format panel, we tend to put a lot of eyes on the master sets because they tend to be the biggest changes to Pauper, just because that's where the most downshifts happen. So we in our heads we just like, cool, this is gonna probably be quite big. Modern Horizons is technically another one as well, because yes, some of those are reprints, but those reprints can also be downshifts. It doesn't happen often, granted, but we have to acknowledge it. See stuff like Fairy Seer, for example, which is not a reprint, but that was a common that is now a notable role player in like the fairies decks, so forth. So I think coming into this year, Modern Horizons 3 is the set that we're like laser focused on, just because it's got the Modern Horizons name.
Yeah. Modern Horizons, also known as Pauper Rotation.
Yeah, right. So
I don't know what you're talking about. Modern
Yeah.
Horizons hasn't affected any Pauper in any way, shape, or form. What are
not
you?
at all. But yeah, it's felt like there's been like one big release a year that we have to like laser focus on.
Yeah.
Last year was Commander Masters. This year it's Modern Horizons, because there is no Masters release this year, at least not yet. I don't think there will be. But yeah, so we'll be pretty attentive to Modern Horizons just because the power level is just higher on those sets, which also means the commons and uncommons are going to be more powerful, which will also mean it will likely affect Pauper. So we need to be pretty on the ball with that one. I'm excited though. I like Modern Horizons.
I just like new cards that affect Pauper. I like to brew, so that's all good. Quick fire before I move on to my next question, because we spoke about it earlier before Reese joined the call, is 3 cards you would like to be downshifted that come to your head.
Okay, so Dried Militant's one, which we talked about.
Yeah.
Gifted Aetherborn.
Okay.
And Unclaimed Territory.
That's one we've spoke about before as
well. Also, Flames of the Bloodhand.
Oh yes, that is this
I would like that one too.
Wait, yeah, Flames of the Bloodhand's the Skullcrack, right? Is that the but 3 mana? Is that the one I'm thinking?
Yeah, it's basically the Skullcrack. Yeah,
but for 3 mana.
I think that would. I think that would be quite good as
well.
To
be fair, I agree on this one. I was speaking to someone earlier, basically, that someone was on about Skullcrack, and I'm on the principle that Skullcrack is too good at 2 mana, and basically Skullcrack at 3 mana is effectively fine.
Nah, Skullcrack would be fine.
Oh, shut your face, you red player.
They're my ones that I would like. Also, another one that I would like, but it would be difficult to justify now because you've got the indestructible lands, is Field of Ruin. I think Field of Ruin could be fine, but the problem is you have these artifact indestructible lands, so no one's going to play it. But Unclaimed Territory is one I would really like because people love typo decks. And you have stuff like elves, you have stuff like slivers, which are historically quite well liked decks. You also have fairies as well. And I think it would be a really cool way to introduce people into Pauper because they can play a typo deck. They're like, cool, I can play goblins with my 4 unclaimed territories or whatever. Because mana in Pauper isn't fantastic, let's be honest. So just having something to support creature typo decks would be really cool. And Gifted Aetherborn was one I would like back when Mono Black Control was a thing, which it really isn't now because it's Golgari Gardens. But I figured that would be a really nice one as well, just because it's not too powerful, but it's just subtly good enough that I think it would be fine for like black decks against red.
Dried Militant was a weird one because me and Teasdale were like looking at the spoilers and we're like, oh, Judge's Familiar's got a downshift. Oh, Dryad'll have a downshift as well, and it just didn't. Like, oh, okay.
I would love Dried Militant. I think like a good white aggro deck with that, or a green aggro deck with that would do really, really well. And I don't think it would be too powerful.
And one step closer to Death and Taxes.
But if I had to like be put on the spot, like the one card I wanted downshifted, it would be Unclaimed Territory. But I'm thinking in more of a bigger picture of trying to get more people into Pauper.
Yeah. But I also do think as well, on another note, a bit tangential, but that I think Pauper's mana being bad is also one of the best things about Pauper, is it kind of keeps Pauper in check. So Unclaimed Territory is a great way to fix the mana of typo decks, as you say, while also not making the mana better for non-typo
decks. You have stuff like Lorien Revealed now, which is basically, makes mana better to an extent.
Well, and the bridges, like Affinity was just like a super clunky deck with a super weak mana base, and then the printed bridges just like, okay, you can play whatever color you want.
Oh, damn bridges.
Damn. See, I told you Modern Horizon doesn't affect anything.
Yeah.
Um,
I never understood why they have indestructible and artifact typing. It's like, why do they have both?
Yeah.
yeah.
Can't they just have one or the other?
Mm,
Then it would be fine. But then again, that was designed with limited in mind because there was like a Boris, Jeskai, and Is It like artifact stick in Modern Horizons 2 limited. So that's why they exist. So they made the cycle. But it's like I wish they didn't exist sometimes.
yeah. I get that completely. I guess before I move on, obviously PFP questions. What do you think your personal thoughts are on the format as a whole since the Swift Sway ban? If you can tell us, obviously, what cards you're keeping an eye on, that's fine. If you can, obviously, that doesn't matter. But what do you think of the format as a whole?
So I think the format's fine. Like I think we're as a whole are generally quite happy with it. The cards that we're keeping an eye on are the cards that we mentioned in the last update. So stuff like All That Glitters is one that comes to mind. Um, there has been nothing that we've gone, hey, this is a problem. We're really cool. We're really excited by Tithing Blade being a thing. We talked about Talarian Terror for a while. Like, hey, is this a card that we can potentially ban because it's just blue Gurmag angler with ward, and that's really really good. But Tithing Blade does a really good job of beating that because it's really good against those style of decks. So I think in general we're quite happy with the way things are going. Obviously we're keeping an eye on things all the time. I think we're happy with the power level of red. Since even though red I still think is the best color in Pauper, it's not as bad as it was during Swissbear's time. And Goblin Tomb Raider seems to be okay. We were worried about that card upon release just because it is basically Goblin Guide for Pauper. But generally, I think we're quite happy, and that's all I can really say right now. I can't really give much more insight besides the announcement we made in December. We're still keeping an eye on the same cards. So,
To be fair, I do think that obviously I've kind of discussed it, to be fair, to death on my other channel and also here. I do think
yeah,
the format is and was fine, to be fair, to an extent before Swiftspear. Like, in general, it was very much balanced-esque. It was just very much the only thing that was really banned was sideboard cards.
yeah,
But I ultimately do think, and I will die on this hill as Reese has died on his sticker hill, that the hardest format for a panel of people to ban and fix is a format that is balanced but unfun. And if that is still the case, which obviously if people are twining about glitters or the next best card or terror or whatever, that's fine. But yeah, I envy you guys trying to fix a balanced but unfun format. It's a difficult job.
It's really hard. It's really hard because you want competitive players to be happy, obviously, because people play online, and we also want people to get into Pauper as well. So you need to make the format fun and inviting and accessible, which it is for the most part based on price. Price is a big accessibility point for Pauper, but we just have to consider that stuff, and it is very very hard to balance it under the weight of the amount of comments that come out every month. It's difficult. I think we do a pretty good job considering, but it's not an easy job because I don't think anyone like it's a very unique situation for us. Like no, I don't think like the Commander Rules Committee or the CAG have the same problem. They can just be like, yeah, whatever. But it's just like
Yeah.
when everything is just like incidentally could just break Pauper in half just because it's a limited archetype in an upcoming set. Yeah, it is difficult, but I do think we do a good job, and we also do a really good job at communicating. Like that's the big thing that we like to do, and it's like our gold standard for how people should talk about these things. We just try and set an example.
So moving obviously on to more PFP related questions. We have obviously spoke about them. If you do not want to answer, that's obviously fine or whatever. Or if you can only answer so much, again, you'll obviously just let us know. My first one's quite an easy one. I hope you'll be able to answer this one. How did you get to become a PFP member? And how do you fit it in around your other, obviously, Magic projects, Magic job, obviously every other thing Magic-y?
So it was obviously a few years ago. Gavin just like messaged me going, "Hey, do you want to have a quick 30-minute chat?" And then I was like, "Oh God, did I say something about WotC that was bad? Am I gonna get like banished or something. Because when someone says that, you just think of the worst case scenario. It's just like your boss going, "Hey, can I have a chat for a minute?" And you're like, "Crap, am I going to get fired or something?" It was like on that level. So we had the chat, and he kind of proposed the PFP at this point, how he and Aaron Forsyth were looking to create a panel for Pauper because it was clear WotC could not give it the attention it deserved, and there's such a strong community and competitive following that it deserved the attention. And Gavin just explained it, like his proposal, like how he wanted a bunch of people from across the world, from different backgrounds, from different like involvements in the community as well. He wanted competitive, he wanted casual outlooks, everything like that. And then Gavin was just like, "Do you want to be on the panel?" And I was just like, "Yeah, sure, this is great. I love Pauper, and it would be really cool to be involved with a group of people, like-minded people, to help cultivate this format." And Gavin did stress that he would be leading the panel as well because he's the point of contact for WotC. So that was like the November before, the announcement came out in June. And we rattled off a few names, like who else would you like to see on here? So I was just like, Alex and Paige were the first two that came to mind because they are I think, really good role models, and when people think about Pauper, they're the people they think of. So getting those involved, and there was a few other people, and then here comes the PFP, and we've been going ever since. In terms of how I fit it with my day to day, so the PFP, we just have a Discord server, and we just chat in there a lot. And whether that's talking about the format, talking about hey, is there any cards that we need to be worried about in an upcoming set, or any stuff around conventions, because we're looking to plan some stuff around Magic Cons and that kind of stuff. And like I've been talking to Heisen quite a bit in the Discord about Paupergeddon and getting that going, that kind of thing. So that we're always talking about something about Pauper. It's not necessarily about the format, but once the data comes in and we get the challenge data and stuff, we start talking. So it's basically a constant chatter in the Discord. Yeah, and it's really easy to manage because it's just on Discord, and we're all chatting. If there's some news or some random comment that looks to be pretty good that got printed, we'll talk about it, that kind of thing. So while it's a big responsibility, it's quite easy to manage because it's Discord. Like, come on, Discord's like really easy to do. But yeah, it's difficult to chat at times because we're all on different time zones because we are an international group. We've got people in Japan, we've got people in Brazil, I'm in the UK, people in the US, we've got someone else in Europe. So that's why the conversation kind of happens all the time, because we're all on different time zones, which is also, it's kind of nice, to be honest. So I can wake up and check the PFP Discord and so said this, and so, oh yeah, this is a good thing or whatever. And yeah.
Is it the first thing you check?
Congrats.
Just
It's
out of
one of the first things. It's one of the first
Just
things
out
I
of curiosity.
check. It's normally saying congrats to Heisen or Weber for winning a Pauper challenge, mostly. But yeah, the conversation is good. We talk about a lot of things, not just the format, but just like how we can advertise Pauper as well as panel members.
No, that's great. Do you weird one? Do you obviously, I know you're all very busy, all in your own jobs, and all do. People have content about PFP. Do you watch those, or people link those? Genuinely, just out of curiosity, like.
So I watch a lot of Pauper stuff. I may not like say, hey, I'm here, sort of thing. Like, I'm in the UK Pauper group, and sometimes I show my face. I read a lot of stuff that goes on in there. I occasionally read the Reddit, like occasionally, because Reddit is not a great.
It's a bit outdated,
let's be honest.
to be fair.
It's a bit volatile in
Yeah.
general as a like a social media site. So I occasionally check it, but I don't check it often because it's just, I don't think it's a good gives me good idea of things. But I also go on Twitter. I see what people post on Twitter. I check the YouTube comments from Gavin's video about Pauper. I get this stuff. I watch YouTube videos of some of the Pauper grinders, that kind of stuff. And feedback is really important. Some of it's not great because you're going to get people that complaining because it's 2024 and we're in a very online society, so people are going to complain. But yeah, I read and watch a lot of stuff.
That's
I
good.
read Alex Ullman's articles. I read Paige's articles. Like Paige did a really good article on Bogles. Did like a huge primer on it on Cool Stuff Inc. I recommend checking it out. Like I read that stuff because it's relevant to my job.
Yeah.
And it's just good to have. It's good to be proactive on that stuff, and not me just going, "Oh, by the way, I'm here." You know, you be on your best behavior, because it's not about that. It's just
No,
I
that's
need to know this stuff. And that's another thing that we do in our little Discord. Is just like share cool content that we see. It's like, look at this thing, you know, is this someone did this like turn one play with this pauper deck? Is this a problem, sort of thing? And it's like, nah, because like the chance of them pulling this off again is like X%, because it's, you know, based on the cards you draw or whatever. But so yeah, we're very, you know, involved in a observant way.
which is definitely good, because I did notice, obviously, when Swift Spear was banned, especially in the UK Pauper group, there was like someone posted like basically like, what do you think of this ban, blah 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 blah, like what's our thoughts on something, and I commented basically like I'm really here for this, and then I remember you replied to that post as well saying I am really here to listen to this. I'm tagging myself for the comments or something like that. And
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
just put like a smiley face.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
like, hey, I'm here. If you've got anything to say, I am right here, sort of thing. Um, it's not that we make decisions just in our little fortress
bubble,
of Discord solitude. We do look at what other people are saying, and obviously what people are saying is very important to us because they're the ones playing it. Obviously, it's very hard to pull the black and the white from the grey. The grey people being, you know, complaining for no reason. It's very hard to like work through that. But no, we are very, you know, we pay attention to what people are saying and doing, and we'll see tweets and stuff. And I check the Pauper hashtag once in a while, and you know, check the local Pauper events that go on Magic Online, like what like top 8'd, that kind of thing. Like we're pretty on the pulse with that sort of stuff, which is good.
No, it's good. Because obviously I do like it when obviously people do discuss these things, like, and obviously discuss the feedback, the state of the format, and all that sort of stuff. But I do agree with you. Like, it must be hard, obviously, to sift, basically, without a better term, sift through the shit is the way I'm gonna put. Because there's a lot of people who do complain for complaining's sake. I do like to I do like to complain. Don't get me wrong. As Reese will know, I love to complain. But I do.
We're British. We love complaining. It's in our DNA. There is the like the Pauper, the actual Pauper Reddit is be pretty rough at times. So it's just like I tend to pick and choose what I read on that Reddit. Like mostly Gavin's videos that he posts that are Pauper adjacent, I will look at the comments because they tend to be fairly accurate and give me a better idea than there's someone going, blah blah blah, something about Sunscape Familiar that they've moaned about 100 times. It's like, cool, buddy.
Priest of Titania is broken. Look at this.
Yeah.
That was one from our locals the other day. Yeah, I think for
unban ATOG, which is another one. It's just like, yeah, okay,
that's just me.
You've been assaulted.
The professor said it to me.
Yeah,
it's like, it's not happening.
Oh, I love ATOG.
Both of you have been assaulted simultaneously.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we've been pretty big fans of the PFP and having that in place. Like basically since you started, it actually feels like people are looking after the format rather than WotC just putting it in the back room and just leaving it there.
Yeah, because they made some like WotC themselves made some decisions that just didn't make sense for Pauper.
Yeah.
Look at Expedition Map. That ban like made no literal sense, and it's like, like if you're just banning cards for the sake of it, like why do it?
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the things that triggered the PFP, just to make these decisions as correct as possible. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I just sort of, for me, I feel like other formats would also benefit from a similar system, in particular Legacy. Do you think, obviously being on the panel, do you think it would work for other formats?
I think it could work for Legacy because you don't need it in Vintage, because Vintage you restrict stuff, which is completely different. I think Vintage could do it. Not Vintage. I think Legacy could do it, but I just don't know who have a panel for that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And considering WotC sort of care about legacy, as in they have Eternal Weekend, you know, you can still run like team events that have legacy. There is like an adjacent sort of interest. It should be, I think it should be community run, because there are a lot of people who actually really care about legacy, and I think us at the PFP have set a good standard for how you should communicate these things and how you should organize it, so it is possible. I just don't know who you get involved. But I think having other people involved would make it a positive. But also, WotC don't make money out of it. But also, WotC don't make money out of Pauper.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting line. But I think Legacy, like overall, could do with that. I just don't know if it's worth doing. If that also makes sense, which is really weird to say because of Pauper. I don't think there's anyone at WotC that cares legacy in the same way that Gavin cares about Pauper.
Yeah, that was my next thought. Is maybe we just need someone inside WotC who really loves legacy, like Gavin loves Pauper.
Yeah, like I think that's what it needs, and like a legacy panel could work. And I think having something international and diverse, or global and diverse, would be really, really good. I just don't know who you get for that. Like, I can think of a few people off the top of my head, but I don't know if they would be equipped to, you know, handle a panel. But it'd be cool to see. Like, it works for Commander, it works for Pauper.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, I guess.
To be fair, there is obviously probably an argument, in my opinion, to probably FP whatever format, to be honest, even though obviously the main thing for Legacy and Pauper is obviously they're eternal, but that is also an issue.
I think Standard, Modern, and Pioneer should be WotC focused, because they're obviously relevant to the RC formats and the Pro Tour formats. I think Legacy could do with a panel style format. I just don't know who you get. And like, for what it's worth, Legacy seems to be in a pretty good spot right now. Like, from what WotC have done, it seems to be Legacy's in a good spot. The biggest problem is putting the online and the tabletop formats together, because there's different card like legalities and printings and licensing and stuff, which I don't think if there was a panel in place that would get fixed, because that goes beyond their control. Like, if it happened to the PFP at some point. So I'd like it to happen. I just don't think it will, unfortunately. Unless Gavin Verhey legacy variant comes out and be like, hey, here's a legacy panel. Whatever. But
I guess moving on to that, obviously, how do you think you were doing PFP wise? Are you happy with obviously yours, everyone's involvement? What would you do differently, or how do you think the community views you? Like, just generally, how do you think you're doing as like a panel wise?
Generally, we're doing good. It's really hard to self-evaluate, considering a lot of your efforts is reflected in the public eye, basically. But I think generally we're doing a good job. I really like how we communicate stuff. I like how Gavin does his videos, how we have a script. We write the script for the videos as well. And also we have, you know, there's a couple of Japanese people on the PFP. They translate it to Japanese, so the Japanese people can understand what the announcement says. So we're really good at communicating and making sure everyone understands it. I do think we can be a bit better than that. I would like us to have a website. Like, you know, the RC and the CAG, they have a website. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It would just be really cool just to have a page of, hey, here's the stuff that we're talking about or considering about, or just having a point of reference whenever we do a video that's like, we're watching these cards. We're not banning anything, but we're watching these cards. Because some people want a text version of that, and we have nowhere to put that text version, because WotC won't post it because it's not a ban update, which makes sense. So it would be really cool just to have a website where we can just like, here's the stuff here's a video, here's the text version to support it for you know, accessibility reasons. It would also be really cool for that website just to highlight some cool Pauper content, some cool videos, like a cool podcast, really cultivate like Pauper content. I think that's something we could do, but the problem is WotC won't fund it. We know they won't fund it, because it's, why would they? Right? It's they passed the Pauper thing on to us. But I think going forward, that would be a really cool thing to do, and just have like a PFP.com website. It's just like, yeah, cool. Pauper updates on the WotC website. I can read like a further analysis on the website, like Paige and Alex could write it or whatever, and we don't have to like us independently write it for like TCG Player or CFB or cool stuff, and have our separate opinions fractured upon like 3 different websites.
Yeah.
I think that's something I would really like. It's just time, money, like a lot of things. But generally, I think we're doing a good job. It's just what's he stop releasing so much stuff so we can actually let things settle a bit, because it feels like things are changing all the time.
So first, sorry.
I think that sort of just answers my next question as well, which was basically about the level of communication. I think the quality of communication is really good, with the videos and the articles and everything. But like you say, it would be sweet to have a website and have more information on there about we're watching these cards or etc.
And yeah, that kind of dives into what I was going to say. Basically, is that my main thing is Twitter. Get a Twitter profile account for the PFP.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's just like creating an actual brand.
I can make your logo. Just
it's on the long list of things I would like to do.
Yeah,
but the
for
thing
sure.
is, no one else will do it. Like I can bring this stuff up and be like, I can do this, but I also have a full-time job in Magic,
for sure.
and which is quite busy. But I would love to like do this stuff. I think we could be better like a singular entity than like 7 people across different accounts. I agree. But I'm really happy with our communication. I understand people get a bit frustrated when it's like, oh, there's an announcement coming from PFP. It must be a bad announcement, but it's just like, here's a status update. Which I think is a really good thing to do. Because you're either going to get people that complain that nothing's happening or haven't heard anything. And when we do like a health update, people are just going to complain that then there's no bans. What are you doing? So people are always going to complain no matter what. But I think it's good to be transparent and just be open about it. It's like, hey, it's been like 2 months. We should just probably just have like a quick status update, talk about what we're thinking about. Not necessarily going, hey, should we unban this or should we unban that? Not necessarily that. Just be like, we're still here. We're still thinking about cards. We have a watch list, that kind of thing. And I think people really appreciate it because you don't get that in other formats.
Yeah, I think we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Just even that reassurance that we're still here. We are still looking at the format. This is what we're thinking about. It's great.
So I think a lot of people see us as just like 7 people that commune 4 times a year. Be like, yeah, we should ban this, we should ban that. See you in 3 months, and then we disappear again. That doesn't happen. We're quite active and chatty. Granted, we're not very good at saying that because our social media presence is very segregated because we're individual people. We don't have like a combined account. But we do talk quite a bit. It's not like we're just twiddling our thumbs and then doing something due to community pressure or whatever. A lot of the time we're just waiting for data or something else to happen. Like you can't just go around, I'm just going to ban this card straight away because you don't know how it's going to play out. Like Swiss Beer could have been a dud. Like we knew it wasn't, but it could have been a dud. Something else could have stopped it.
Sorry to butt in there, but that kind of answers sort of what I was going to say there, which is also answered by the Twitter account and a website. Is the one thing I liked was when Brothers War came out, or before Brothers War came out, Gavin posted a tweet saying, Energy Refract is here. We have got our eyes on it because obviously it's very similar to Prophetic Prism. Turns out it was pretty much, I wouldn't say a dud, but it's not as obviously as oppressive as they expected it to be. So that kind of does work out. And also, to be fair, that sort of level of communication again is sort of fixed if you have this universal place to talk about.
Yeah, it's just that communication doesn't happen every time. So while Gavin mentioned about energy fracture straight away, like we were slow off the gates going, hey, Modestry Swiss Beer is a thing, we know about it, sort of thing. Just because as much as we want to make time for stuff, like stuff just gets in the way. And it's really frustrating that stuff gets in the way. I would love for this to be my full-time job.
Oh, for sure.
Being on the PFP doesn't pay my bills as much as I wish it did. But we all do try our best, and I will take that on board. Like, I would like PFP to be an entity online, just so people can follow.
Yeah.
And just have everything posted through there. I think that makes a ton of sense.
I think, but I do agree overall. Like, is not that not this is like a criticism or you're interviewing for an entity of PFP. Like,
No,
like your communication level is
my
next
job.
level.
It's my like it's part of my job to listen to criticisms
Yeah.
and like right wrongs. It's like that's the whole point of a panel. It's like, you can't have a panel if we're just gonna be like, no, you're not allowed to criticize anything. We
Yeah.
make every right decision. We are perfect because we're gonna make mistakes. We're human. It's gonna happen, right? You know, it's just as long as people understand that, you know, we're human and we're not gonna do everything correct. We'll do it. We'll do the best we can, and that's all. I think that's all you can ask.
Yeah, you are overall, honestly, you're all doing a fantastic job, to be fair. But we're big on the panel. Like, panels obviously, I don't want to say saved Pauper, but it's definitely done a lot of good things in a lot of short space of time. You know that Wizards would have done.
It's a long journey from where we want Pauper to be, and the panel is like the first step of it. And I think after being together for a few years, we have an idea of, you know, how we talk to each other, how we plan things, how we communicate things. And then, you know, that stuff just takes time. It's not like bang, you know, immediately done, let's move on to the next thing. It's a slow growth thing. And the PFP isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to be the same people. We're not looking to add people. You know, this is a good amount of people. Sorry. If someone leaves, I imagine someone would come in, but no one's looking to leave. We don't want it to be like a huge, like 20 people sort of thing. Like, I think the commander group is a bit too big, like, because there's a lot of people involved, which makes sense because the format is massive. But for Pauper, like the 6 to 7 people we have is ideal because it taps into every aspect of Pauper, which is casual and competitive. You also have the international aspect. People treat Pauper differently in different parts of the world. You know, in Japan, they take it very seriously because you have, like, as you mentioned earlier, they have the God of Pauper event, which is this really like competitive, sometimes wacky, because Japanese players are very creative and innovative with deck builds. So a lot of cool stuff comes out of there. And I think we have a nice mixture of people that have different backgrounds and different experiences and different outlooks on what Pauper should be. And I think we're in a good spot. So yeah, sorry, there's no space on the PFP, but if someone was to leave, I imagine that would get placed at some point. It's not something we've really talked about because we all really want to do this and we all really enjoy being involved.
That is, yeah. I'm a bit gutted. I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, I was hoping my invite was coming in the post, but on a slight note, I do like tangents. To be fair,
you do.
The thing that reminded me was obviously the God of Pauper thing was the Blue Black Initiative being absolutely broken for like months. And like Heterodox and all these Japanese players were like, "Oh yeah, Initiative is absolutely busting." And I was like, "What are you going on about? Like these cards are like really
Japanese
bad."
players are on a different level.
They are next level.
I've watched a lot of Ken Yukihiro in my time, and that man's a wizard. So it's just like Japanese players they just think and just build Magic in a completely different way, and it's amazing, to be honest. And it's just like, I'm always excited when it's like the God of whatever events. It's like, what spice is going to come out of this, because there's going to be something good.
Definitely. If I was to take an American, an English person, an Italian, and a Japanese person's deck who's on the same archetype, I'm trusting the Italian and the Japanese. So you know,
right.
But
they're pretty wacky with that stuff, and that's great.
Sure. Well, you answered my last question, obviously, because it was basically my invite. So that's gone out the window. So
Sorry.
Oh, jeez. So do you have anything else that you would like to add, question-wise, or anything? Please, obviously, just at least
that comes to mind, unless you like have any feedback or anything you want to talk about Pauper-wise. But I think we've covered a good chunk of it in the last hour and a half or so.
We've been here 2 hours, an hour and 50 minutes.
2 hours, okay. Time is a flat circle. Okay, cool.
So yeah, if you would like to take a chance to tell the internet where they can find you, and don't be on Reddit, clearly. because that is
Well,
assessment.
I am on Reddit, but Reddit's definitely like a spectator account at this point. So the best place you can find me is on Twitter. So that's Emma Partlow on Twitter. I don't really use any other social media at the minute. I do have Blue Sky, which is like Twitter adjacent, which is the same account, same name, Emma Partlow. There is a link tree on my Twitter profile that has all the links to like content and stuff. So all my articles, the coupon commentary, my cube lists are on there. So if you want to check anything out, you can do so there, really. And like for the record, if anyone's listening, feel free to tweet or DM me on Twitter about Pauper stuff. I'll happily answer it as well.
Her link tree, is that what it's called? Link tree will be down in the description below.
Linktree's really cool. It's just this like hub for like all my links and stuff because I can't be bothered to copy and paste them all separately.
I've had this explained to me today because I had no idea
Really
what this
good.
was. But yeah, check it out below.
It's really good.
Would anyone else like anything to add before we close it up?
Nothing from me.
Sound. So if you have enjoyed this podcast, it has been fantastic to have Emma on. It has been great. Please, this obviously the podcast doing, I would like to say fantastically in my opinion. If you would like to share it, please share it with everyone. Share it on Reddit, share it on Twitter, even though we have slated your Reddit. Share it on everywhere. Share it to your dentist, your, I don't know, landlord or whatever. I'm all good. Please, thank you, Emma, for being here. And this is all from Cats and Commons. Until next time, and don't forget to stay hydrated. Peace.
Bye.